Here we go.
Well, we're underway. We're getting our first look at Cedric McMillan, who is put himself in a really, really good spot. All sorts of momentum, Chad. It seems like Cedric has found the formula starting off the season in a big way, bringing all sorts of momentum. And this is exactly the type of structure, shape, and size, and the whole package that I know Arnold Schwarzenegger himself has embraced. So it'll be interesting to see how that type of support impacts how he does here in Columbus.
Well, right off the bat, you can tell that he is much improved over Poland. My question was, how far did they push things in Poland? I don't believe Aceto was in Poland, so I knew that there was going to be a big factor with him coming in here because having Aceto in his corner. You can tell from the get-go he's fuller here, which makes a big difference in his physique, and he is definitely drier than we've seen him. So far, I mean, very impressive and a lot better actually than I thought he was going to be.
Completely agree, and this is going to be the factor right here. This is going to say it all. And really dry through the lats. Glutes look good for Cedric, and the back looks really hard and full. This is a great Cedric McMillan.
This isn't a great Cedric McMillan. This is the best Cedric McMillan we've ever seen.
Chris Aceto is very low-key. Obviously, I'm very good friends with him, and he sent me a picture the other day, and he told me, I'm telling you, I can't believe how good Cedric looks, and I've never heard him say that, and I almost doubted him because I saw what Cedric looked like in Poland, and I said, I can't imagine him changing that much. But you're right. This might be the best Cedric we've ever seen because he's full and he's hard.
And Chad, we've waited for it for Cedric. We've talked about it since he came up. We've waited for. There's been all these predictions, future Mr. Olympia type guy, and that name, that label gets put on only a rare few, and that was put on Cedric right out of the gate. So we may have finally gotten the Cedric we've been waiting for.
Well, we've looked for, we've seen him full, we've seen him flat, but we've been looking for that point where he comes out full and he has a finished look, and this is what we're getting from Cedric. He's always kind of lacked a little bit through the glutes, a little bit of intricate detail. This is going to be a very, very good day for Cedric.
Is he the only guy that can legitimately challenge Kai, an in-shape Kai?
I think so, because he's a different physique. And I'll tell you what, I mean, does that Arnold factor come in? Is there maybe a little something there as far as the stomach goes? I mean, this could be a great day for him. Max Charles, I mean, this is a guy that's just a freak, right? Those shoulder width, I mean, just unbelievable. I don't think that he has that, like, crazy intricate detail, the deep separation that a Cedric does. But he's in shape. He's a big guy. Very, very good showing for Max.
He looks great.
Well, Dave, Max Charles is making his Arnold Classic debut. He, of course, is your 2013 USA champ. He actually won our PBW championships last year in Tampa, kind of getting his career on a whole nother level. And he arrives here in Columbus as a guy that a lot of people feel like over the years could become a real factor in this upper group here in the IFBB Pro ranks.
Well, Chris Aceto's working with him, too, just recently started working with him. And, Max was one of these guys that just succeeded despite himself because he really didn't know what he was doing. He had no formulas or anything like that. And I think Chris kind of like steered him in the right direction. And, obviously the knock against him was always his legs were never able to match that upper body. And I think that they've come up quite a bit here. I think we're seeing a much better lower body on Max than we ever have. And I think his symmetry is improved above the point I've ever seen it.
Ben, you can look at this guy and you can see it's all there for him.
He's bringing a complete package. Like Dave says, the quads were always the big knock, but they've made tremendous progress. The cuts are really deep, and condition is basically perfect.
Well, there are 12 athletes in our Arnold Classic this year. We've gotten a look at Cedric McMillan. Now we're getting a peek at Max Charles for the first time. Justin Compton is up next, Dave.
One thing about Max is, and this is just probably because he's probably still new to the sport in a sense, his presentation probably is not as good as it could be. Given those tools he's working with, I think that, if he can hone that presentation a little better, we're going to see a much better Max Charles in the placings.
He's just so laid back, he's just chilling, doesn't really take anything too seriously, and maybe that's to his advantage, and maybe it's a detriment in the fact that he's not prepared that much.
Well, if you can believe it, this is only the 5th professional show of Justin Compton's career. He was 3rd here a year ago. We talked about that future Mr. O label that was anointed to Cedric McMillan. Well, that label has also been put on Justin Compton by a handful of insiders, and you can see why. This physique flows really nicely. He's got that great shoulder to waist, a great quad sweep. It's a very clean muscled look. And Chad, a lot of folks were kind of counting on Justin to be one of the guys to make this contest interesting at the top.
Absolutely. He's put on so much muscle over the last couple of years. It's just unbelievable. His conditioning is really good. He's dry. He has a tendency sometimes to fade just a little bit in certain areas, especially through the midsection, but he's always nice and crisp. Glutes are peeled. He's got that freaky muscle. Kind of a little bit resembles Wolf in certain shots. But I'll tell you what, he's thick. He's without a doubt one of the thickest guys in this lineup, and I think it will just depend. We're going to have to see these guys side by side. I think that he was knocked a little bit through the midsection last year, and I think that's going to be something they're going to be very nitpicky of. When he opens up and lifts those ribs up, he's good, but when he sits back down, he's had some issues, and so I think that's going to be the key. Right now, he looks great. He's controlling everything. The detail is good. He's dry. I like him. I like him a lot, actually.
To win the Arnold Classic, Chad, you have to pay attention to every little detail. It looks to me like he's not really holding his legs. He's not really holding his poses perfectly. Are the judges watching that, in your opinion?
Absolutely, especially at this level. Those little things, those transitions, being able to just look like a statue at every angle is critical, for sure.
And, that's where a guy like Cedric McMillan really exploits guys like Justin, who might be a little better than him, but Cedric moves with, fluidity, and he really knows how to show off what he's got.
Well, we talked about Evan Centopani. We're getting our first look at him. Believe it or not, this is already his 5th Arnold Classic. He's been in the top 5 every single time. It seems like he's been around forever, but he's still only a young 33 years old, and he's got a couple pro wins. To his credit, of course, Evan is a former national champion, a guy that has all sorts of potential. He's got a big fan base. And Ben, what's your takeaway on our first look here at Evan?
I'll tell you what. Overall, all of the competitors so far have been in great condition. Evan is fantastically shredded. Doesn't look tremendously bigger than he has in the past. I don't know that he's going to stack up really well against Cedric or Justin right now. But it's a great Evan. It's a great Evan. He's in good shape. He's dry. He's full. But just doesn't look like he's going to match up with those guys. We'll have to see when they stand side by side.
Dave, when you look at Evan, it's always there's obviously something about him that's easy to like, but there's something just different about Evan's physique.
Look, we all love arms, chest, and delts, and Evan's got that in spades. His legs just don't have that. He almost has David Henry legs, dare I say. He doesn't have that inner quad, that inner thigh that just gives him that billowy round leg, and it doesn't matches up the body. And even though his conditioning is tremendous, he just lacks something there. And like Ben said, against some of these guys like Compton and Cedric, he's going to have trouble.
Well, earlier we talked about the pro debut of Cody Montgomery. Well, his debut is not. He's not the only one making his pro debut. Lucas Weiler, who we're getting a look at right now, is also making his pro debut. And the reason why he gets to compete here is because he won the Arnold Amateur last year. And Chad, that event has turned out to just be an incredible amateur showcase of some great athletes. And when you win that event, you automatically get your ticket punched here to Columbus for the main event.
Absolutely. I mean, we know that it's obviously put out some amazing athletes. And, this is his first trip here. He's just getting his feet wet. I mean, he's got a bright future, you can see. I mean, he lacks in a few areas, obviously, but he's just getting started. He's in a tough lineup. These guys are all bringing it. And I'll tell you, I mean, is he going to, look, he's done his homework. He's in decent shape. He just needs a few more years under his belt.
Dave, I'm going to go to you on this one because I feel like you're the only one who's going to provide some commentary. Let's talk about these posing trunks. What's going on back there?
Look, everyone's got their own thing going on. At this level, this is an amateurish move, and maybe he is still an amateur in his mind. And, I would think that you would come in with a solid pair of maybe black posing.
That's exactly what I was going to say. He's in Germany. He doesn't have a lot of great advice. His posing is weak at best. His polish is not there. As far as being on the Arnold Classic stage, he's making amateur mistakes.
But having said that, this is a good bodybuilder here.
He's in shape.
Got a great physique.
And I got news for you. That back lat spread was very impressive.
And the midsection's tight. This is a good-looking bodybuilder. I mean, he's got a lot of things going for him. But, we're going to pick you apart. When you're on a stage like this and you do something like that, we're gonna call you out for it. But overall, a solid pro debut, and he's gonna make one final. Maybe that was directed to you, Chad. I don't know.
But apparently he knew what he was doing when he was wearing those trunks, right? That was completely planned out, right?
That was. I feel like that was. But anyway, so we're gonna get our look at Juan Morel now. Juan Morel, your 2015 New York Pro champ, his 5th year as a pro and his believe it or not, this is his first appearance here on this stage in Columbus, and one of the real good guys in the sport. And Ben, what's the takeaway on the first look here?
Big upper body, and as typical is the case with Juan, his legs just aren't going to match his upper body. He's known for his conditioning, and Chad, what do you think? I don't think he's quite in the shape he usually is.
I'll tell you what.
Looks watery.
We haven't seen his conditioning or what he's capable of in the last 2 showings. And if you watch him, he's a big social media guy. He's got a crazy metabolism, and I just don't think he's figured it out. He does these epic meals. And, I mean, I believe a week ago he was still eating burgers. The only problem with that is you're basically just putting a Band-Aid on something. You're fixing the fullness, and you're going up and down, up and down, up and down. So his body is never in balance, and so there's no way to determine where it's going to go. Sometimes that may nail it, and other times you won't. And I think what kills him is he doesn't have that intricate detail. He gets lean, he gets hard, but he doesn't look finished. And you can even see it. Like, I've seen him in the off-season, his glutes were hard.
Yep.
But he just lacks that overall detail, that polished look.
And like you say, when you eat that kind of food, you're rolling the dice. You're introducing variables that you can't control. And it looks to me like he's just inflamed. He's lean, but he's swollen.
Well, I think what also, Juan is a tall guy and with a big structure, and he has trouble filling out. I've worked with him in the past. He does need to eat an enormous amount of calories, and sometimes just the clean food doesn't fill him out. But you're right, Ben, when you start putting in crazy ice cream and stuff like that and donuts, the electrolyte balance really gets screwed up, and sometimes you just don't dry out right.
Well, Dan Solomon, along with Chad Nichols, Ben Pekulski, and Dave Palumbo, we are calling the action here at the Arnold Classic Prejudging on digitalmuscle.com. Josh Lenardowitz has stepped to center stage, and of course he is under the tutelage of our good friend Tony Doherty out of Australia. He was actually a rookie just last year. He won 2 out of 3 shows to get his pro career going, so I'd say he's off and running. And Ben, there's a lot of excitement surrounding this young athlete.
Josh has got some great body parts and some great poses. His conditioning here doesn't look anywhere near the other top guys. Maybe not what we expected from Josh. His color looks a little funky. Not going to be a factor in the show.
I actually worked with Josh. I worked with him when he turned pro, and he is a guy that is able to actually get very dry. When you start manipulating his water, his body changes drastically, although I have seen him much drier than this. He has just a little bit of softness still to his skin. Even though he's relatively lean, he doesn't have that hardness that's what he's going to need for this level of competition.
Having said that, when he just got into that lat spread, Dave, you can see why people like him. The shape is there.
He's got the size. He's got a decent shape. He's won shows, and that shows you something. But you know what? He's from Australia. He went to Poland. He came to the U.S. I mean, this guy's been doing a lot of traveling, and traveling can screw your electrolytes up for certain. He looks like he's in shape. I don't know if he's holding water, if he could just be a little leaner. I know Ben mentioned you thought maybe he could be a little harder. I think it could be like a water distribution issue. What do you think, Chad?
I agree. I've seen him, over the last couple of years. Like I said, I worked with him, and water with him is everything. When you start to manipulate him, he's one of those guys. Some guys you take away water and they just disappear. He is one of those guys that changes drastically.
Crowd seems to just love Branch Warren.
Yeah, Branch Warren's names get called, and they go nuts here in Columbus. He's 41 years old. He's been a runner-up at the Olympia. He's won twice here in Columbus. And just when you count out Branch Warren, he always seems to make you look foolish, and he loves to prove everyone wrong. And the question is, Ben, as you get your first look at Branch, is this a version of Branch Warren that's going to be in the mix come tonight?
And as we heard last night, I put my foot in my mouth a couple of times with my predictions, but I don't think he's anywhere near his best. Just looks like things are maybe not as conditioned. He's definitely holding water in a lot of areas, and even his massive, fantastic quads, which are obviously some of the best in the world, just don't look the same as they don't look Branch Warren-esque.
I'll give him credit. I thought he was very flat in Poland, and he is much fuller here, and his body looks better, fuller. But unfortunately, he doesn't have that flow. He doesn't have that natural conditioning that he normally does. Normally, he has like an induced hardness to his skin that has been able to carry him over a lot of guys.
But has he had that in the last 3 to 4 years?
I think maybe in a couple years, but he's missed it the last few shows for sure. And you can see it, even like the upper quad. I mean, his quads are always cross-striated, but you see how that upper quad fades into the obliques. He's just holding a lot of water in those areas. He doesn't have the detail. I think this is probably not going to be a great showing for him, although he has a tendency to get harder as he poses, and he could be one of those guys that the more they work him, the freakier he gets. And let's get real, they love him when he's freaky.
Yeah, I don't see this being a good Branch Warren at all. I think he tried to fill up from last week. If Branch is not dynamically detailed, his structure just destroys him. And I don't see him making the top 6 here. This lineup is just too good today.
Dave, what do you think about his strategy to fly home to Dallas? And he was training really, really hard this weekend. I know he flew in late Thursday night. Does that give him enough time to get rid of all that water from travel and training?
I think you're right. That might have been a bad strategic move on his part.
Well, here's Johnny Jackson. If you can believe it, we're looking at a guy who has competed in more than 70 pro shows. This is his 7th Arnold Classic. He just turned 45. And Dave, if I'm not mistaken, he also was working with
Chris Aceto.
With Chris Aceto. And I actually caught up to Johnny when we were in Tampa a while back. And he just had great things to say about Chris and about how Chris has sort of recaptured that formula for him. And his career has kind of had a rebirth over the last year.
This is a way much better Johnny Jackson than we saw last week. That's for sure. I think that obviously his problem is his legs. He's got that issue. There's a balance problem. When he's in a lineup with great guys, he doesn't seem to do well. When he's at some of these smaller shows, though, he can exploit the fact that his upper body is just so unbelievable, and he snags a win every year. I don't know how he does it, but every year he seems to wind up on that Olympia stage.
Yeah, his upper body is just absolutely world class. If you haven't seen this guy in person, you got to go see Johnny in person. His traps, his pecs, his back. I don't know if there's another guy on the planet with this much muscle on that small itty bitty frame. You can see his hips are tiny and everything. It just pops.
The unique thing with him is he actually is one of those guys that if he pushes his conditioning to that next level, he has a tendency to lose his legs. So he has to kind of find a balance where he doesn't push that all the way, but it's still good enough to get him in the mix. He's full here, but I don't believe his conditioning is at the level of most of the other guys. I don't see him, in the mix, but I think it is a good balance. He still is very competitive. Again, I just don't know if his conditioning is going to get him anywhere close to the top group.
Now, we haven't seen Kai Green yet, so we'll exclude him from this. But so far,
Cody Montgomery.
So far, it's fair to say that Cedric has made the strongest case of the guys we've seen. But now we're going to get a look at Cody Montgomery as he walks on a professional stage for the very first time. Here in the U.S., only a few short months ago, he became legal drinking age, just turned 21 years old, and a lot of people felt that he was going to lack the size to be able to stack up in a lineup like this. He is one of the iconic teenage bodybuilding champions of our time. Entered the USA's the first go-around, won the overalls. He has been on the fast track, and his fast track arrives here in Columbus as a professional, Chad, for the very first time.
I'll tell you what, I'm impressed with this kid. I mean, it's not very often we're ever going to see a 21-year-old on the Arnold stage. He's a kid that looks bigger than he actually is. I think he's holding his own. Does he need improvements? Absolutely. He needs more size. He could be a tad leaner here. A little bit drier, actually, is what I would like to see him. But overall, it's a very good showing for him. I think that he's going to fall somewhere in the middle. I don't think that he, I think he's hanging right in there.
I love Cody's detail. I think he's going to have a heck of a future. I think what he's missing is the refinement, right? He's missing paying attention to those details, holding his poses a little bit longer. Just going to take time with more show appearances.
He's got a tremendous amount of muscle maturity for such a young age. I mean, I'm really shocked at it. I just think he needs more size to really balance out those great legs he's got. But, I mean,
Tony Friedman.
You got to take your hat off to him. This was a great showing for him. We might be talking about him, 5 years from now and saying, remember when we saw him on the Arnold for the first time? Can you believe what he looks like now? I mean, this was a teen national guy a couple of years ago.
Well, just to put it into perspective, when this gentleman, Tony Freeman, was 28 years old, Cody Montgomery was born. So we're getting our first look at Tony Freeman here, the 49-year-old, more than 60 pro shows to his credit. This is his 11th Arnold Classic. I caught up with him at the lobby of the host hotel yesterday, and he says he's never felt better. He says this is going to be a strong version of that X-frame physique that he has made famous. And Chad, I'm going to go to you now on Tony because it's really remarkable that he's still doing it at this level.
It is. I mean, we went from the youngest competitor to the oldest competitor, and I'll tell you what, I mean, he's a guy that is always good. His downfall has always been from the back. He's always had an issue with conditioning. I don't think he's bad here. Is it the best Tony Freeman that we've ever seen? No. Is he going to be a competitor for one of those top spots? No. But I think that he is good. I think that he's still bringing it. And at 49, I think that is clearly amazing.
For all you competitors out there, if you want to see what polished presentation looks like, just have a look at Tony Freeman.
Yeah, Tony always presents himself and probably shows off his strengths better than anyone else out there, and really hides his weaknesses. The problem is that Tony always thinks that this is the year that he's going to win the Olympia. And he's back and he found some new magic potion or supplement or therapy or colonic or whatever that's going to be the missing key. I think that age has set in, and his legs have come down a lot in size. He doesn't have those big billowy quads he used to have, but you can see his structure still there, and he's still got it. It's just, I think the bigger guys have a much more difficult time of holding on as they get older, as opposed to some of the shorter guys like Dexter Jackson, I think, who doesn't have to hold quite as much muscle as Tony to look impressive on stage.
It seems like only yesterday that Tony Freeman showed up to an Olympia with a T-shirt that said "Stand me next to him," and he was referring to Ronnie Coleman. That's how good Tony Freeman was for a number of years. He was really one of the great bodybuilders in the sport. But speaking of great bodybuilders in the sport, here is a guy that some people would argue might just be the greatest. Kai Green makes his way to the stage for the first time since the fall of 2014, and you can see why there was so much excitement surrounding Kai Green, and he has been chomping at the bit to get back to the stage. And the question is this going to be good enough for what would be his third Arnold Classic title?
Well, I'm going to tell you, he's good. He's very, very good. Is he at his all-time best? I don't believe so. I don't believe he's at his all-time best. But he is a freak. The detail, he has those strong points, the detail in those lower lats, his glutes, those quads, just freaky muscle. Well,
and Ben, you look at Kai, and you can see why. It's Kai, Phil, and then everyone else, because he's got so many weapons. It's a physique that just comes at you from so many different dimensions. So you can see why it's easy to predict a guy like Kai to win, because even if he misses it, there's just so much happening on that frame.
Just so much detail, so much muscle. It just looks freaky. His condition is great. Is he his best? No, but he's absolutely good enough to win the show, in my opinion.
I'm going to disagree with you guys. I think that this guy is among some of the best we've seen from him. I think he's shredded. I think his waistline is small. I think that he's got all the muscle groups there. I think that this is a very difficult Kai Green to beat. I think it's one of the best ones we've seen. I think if this Kai Green had showed up at the Olympia this past year, he would have been Mr. Olympia right now, without a doubt. He would have crushed Phil Heath looking the way he does.
I agree with you on that one.
Well, strong words by Dave Palumbo and Ben Pekulski. If Kai had shown up, they feel that he would be the Olympia champion, and it'll be interesting to see if Kai makes his way back to the Olympia stage. And there's been all sorts of rumblings as to what Kai might do here in 2016. But we got our first look at him, and it's good to have him back, because the sport is far more interesting with Kai Green competing.
Without a doubt. And I'll tell you what, I think everybody was waiting to see, was he going to bring the same old package? Was it going to be better? Was it going to be worse? I think that we're seeing something that we expected. I think we expected to see a great Kai Green, and I think that's what we're seeing. I think it'll be interesting to see him next to a Cedric, because they are so different. And, will he be that dominant as far as his muscularity, or will the gap closened up a little bit?
Well, we mentioned that there are 12 athletes in this year's Arnold Classic. We have seen all 12 of them. The Expediters are going to bring them back out, and head judge Steve Weinberger is going to start to.
So it may actually be a disadvantage that Cedric's been standing around backstage for 20 minutes while everybody was out there posing. You go out there, you pump up, and then you go back and you get cold for 20 minutes. So we got to see what Cedric actually still looks like. Hopefully he's able to hold that really crisp condition that he brought when he walked out.
I just want to read Chris Cito's comment on our forums. He says that Kai Green is very flat. He feels like, and he said we can quote him here. He said he's 5 hours away from crazy due to flatness.
5 hours away from crazy. Well, I got to tell you, when I look at the way this is playing out, we're focusing right now on Cedric and Kai. Why don't you guys give me a take on Justin Compton, because he's the other guy that a lot of folks felt that was going to be a factor, a contender for this title. So is Justin Compton at this point in that conversation right now with Kai and Cedric?
I believe he is, but I will say this. I thought he was going to be a little sharper. I thought he was going to be a little bit more as far as intricate detail. I think that he lacks a little bit, and I think part of that is because he has put on so much muscle over the last 2 years. He hasn't had time to really mature that, and so we're not going to see that just very fine, intricate detail. But he is very, very good. I just don't know if he's going to be a factor. He may have trouble with Cedric if Cedric hasn't failed. Now, looking at Cedric right now, he appears to have faded a little bit to me just by looking at him now. As he starts to pose, he has a tendency to come back around. But I think he was a little better when he first came out. So Ben may be right. That's sitting around. It may take him a few shots to kind of liven back up.
Tell you what, Max Charles may be the surprise of this show, man. His condition is on point. He stands with each one of these guys from the front, maybe not from the waist down. Let's see what it looks like from the back.
Cedric's structure is so big that you just your eyes just go to him, and I think that the height is going to come into play in this show. I mean, you don't think of Compton as a short guy, but next to Cedric McMillan,
Dave, how tall is Cedric?
Cedric's probably 6'1", 6'2".
Yeah.
I think he lies. I think he's actually taller than he really
Side
is.
tricep.
He's certainly the tallest guy on stage.
Bodybuilding's the one sport where they lie about their height the other way around. That's right. Tell you one thing, guys. It's still early. We got a lot of battling to go, but Cedric McMillan is making his case.
He definitely is. I'll tell you what, I mean, this is by far the best Cedric I think that we've seen. And if he can hold that conditioning, like I said, he's one of those guys that sometimes as he poses gets better and better. If you remember, the last few events that we've seen him in,
your favorite, most muscular.
He's, made up ground. And so I could easily see that. I'll tell you what, I mean, through the delts and stuff, I thought Kai looked great, but I don't know if his delts are as big as we've seen him in the past. It's going to be interesting to see Cedric next to him because structurally, Cedric is the best guy on this stage.
Well, what I like, Ben, about
Thank
Cedric
you,
is, and Dave, I know you've interviewed him on this, as have I, he tries to create something that's true to the ideals of the way he thinks a physique should look. That's his thing. He's really committed to that. He doesn't try to come in and beat Kai Green. He doesn't come in and try to be anything that he's not. And, Ben, I'd love to get your thoughts on that because I know that's the kind of thing that has kind of been lost. These guys have lost sight of what they're trying to build, but Cedric has really stayed true to what he's trying to achieve.
Completely agree with what you're saying. He knows his strengths, he knows what he is, and he plays to those strengths. And all these other guys are trying to play and maybe compete against other guys. Cedric's competing against himself every single show.
And usually that's his downfall, and that's his accolades. He usually destroys himself mentally, or he makes himself the greatest bodybuilder in the world. And hopefully, or at least the way it looks today, he's on a high for certain.
Quarter turn to the right.
All right, well, Kai Green is in this half of the group, so he's back on stage, standing next to
Quarter
Tony
turn to the
Freeman
right.
and, of course, young Cody and these guys. Branch Warren is somebody that I know we were just a little critical of, but he tends to kind of, his
Quarter
body
turn
tends
to
to
the
come
right.
alive as these contests go, and all of a sudden you get into the night show, you kind of discard him earlier. Next thing you know, he kind of cleverly
And face
moves his
front.
way into the mix as the contest goes on.
Spread out and hit a front double bicep.
Tell you, with Cody, I almost see like a young Flex Lewis coming out in the way he poses and the way he carries himself on stage.
I was going to say the exact same thing, Ben. That's so funny that you noticed that. But I will say one thing. I think that Kai Green is not a foregone conclusion here. I think that Cedric and Kai and Compton are going to battle it out for many, many
Front
call-outs
lat
today.
spread.
Yeah, I'll tell you what. I mean, Kai by himself was a freak, and you thought that he was a foregone conclusion. Now that you see him in the lineup, I'm going to tell you right now, this is not the best Kai Green that we've seen. I think that it's going to be close, and I think
Side
that it
chest.
is going to depend on how he holds things together through prejudging. But right now you can see there's a bit of a film through the stomach. I don't think he's controlling his stomach as well as he has in the past even. Is he good?
Back,
Absolutely.
double
He's
bicep.
good and conditioned.
Ben, a lot of people have said the only way Kai loses this contest is if he can't control the midsection.
Well, as Chad says, it looks like he's not able to control a lot of his muscles. His quads are coming in and out, his waist is coming in and out, even his glutes are coming in and out. So maybe that time off has actually been a huge detriment to him.
I agree. I think that we are seeing that firsthand. And again, we're being very nitpicky because we're
Back
talking
lat
about
spread.
one of the greatest bodybuilders that we have right now. But I'll tell you what, when you look at the depth, he's always in shape in certain areas. Those are his key areas. And unfortunately, sometimes in the past, they have based his whole diet around those areas and haven't pushed to get those last little bit of intricate details in shape.
Side
And that's what
tricep.
we're seeing right now.
But we're being nitpicky because it's the Arnold Classic, and we
Absolutely.
need to be. Like that's what the judges are doing out there, right? They're looking at those intricate details, and that's what separates first and second.
Dave, it's amazing to consider when you talk about just Cody Montgomery for a second. He's been at this only for a few years. He's 21 years old. It's unfathomable to think what 3 or 4 or 5 years of
Abdominals
training
and thighs.
is going to yield for that guy.
You know, Cody looks like a young Dan Solomon actually in the face. I'm starting to see a resemblance there. Are you
That's-
sure he's not your illegitimate son or something?
That's quite a compliment, I'll tell you. But it's, I'll tell you, my son would be well served to have those genetics. I'll tell you that.
I mean, this kid is obviously what he's accomplished over the year. But you know what? I think Chris Aceto's right, and I think you, Ben, and you in the chat are right. I think
favorite,
that
most
Kai
muscular.
is smoothing out through that midsection right there, and he's losing some of that sharpness, which could certainly hurt him against a Cedric or a Justin Compton.
I'll tell you, one of the advantages that a lot of these guys have of competing week in, week out is your posing just becomes easier. It just becomes natural. It's so much more effortless. And Kai
Thank
looks
you,
like he's
gentlemen.
fighting it. He looks like he can't hold his right leg.
Absolutely. And if you notice, like we seen this last night with Jose, when he lifted his rib cage, his stomach comes in. But when he sets back down on it, then his stomach comes out. Kai is doing that right now. In certain shots, he's controlling it okay. But when he sets those ribs down, his stomach bloats out from the side and from the front. That could be a major factor standing next to a Cedric McMullen who looks unbelievable right now.
Can you also consider the fact that maybe Kai is so hyped up with adrenaline because to be back on stage that sometimes you can exhaust yourself if you overpose? And you guys have done that. You know what I'm talking about, Ben. You pose too hard, you lose everything. You just like lose the pump. You lose like your
I typically
endurance.
pose too hard because I get harder as I pose. So I try to do that to myself. Like I find as though I sweat out that water and then I get better.
And also, one thing worth mentioning, guys, this is different than the Olympia in that this isn't a 2-day show. These guys are back here in a couple hours. So,
4 hours.
right. So the adjustments aren't going to be, we always talk about day 1 at the Olympia, day 2 at the Olympia. This is a whole different dynamic, Chad.
Yeah, it is. But I'll tell you the other thing that stood out to me, and like Ben said, it does at time hurt him. If you noticed his breathing, when he was breathing, he's breathing heavy through his stomach. And when you start doing that, then you start forgetting about all of the other things that you're doing. And you start focusing on just a couple key muscle groups to squeeze on instead of from top to bottom. I think that the time off has hurt him drastically. I mean, again, he's still a phenomenal bodybuilder and is going to be at the top of this group. But I don't think this is a foregone conclusion either.
I'll just throw this in. My phone's blowing up with text messages from people all around the world watching. I know you guys are too. All of our phones are jumping off the table. And there's a lot of Cedric McMillan love out there. A lot of people feel like Cedric McMillan has done what he had to do to win this contest. Now, of course, a big part of it is the posing round, right? That's a big part of it. Now, that's a huge advantage for Kai Green, one of the best posers in the history of the sport. So if they're going to judge the posing round that they say they are, well, that could be the thing that puts Kai out in front.
Cedric's a pretty good poser. I'm not going to take anything away from Cedric. I think Kai's an entertainer. I think Cedric's a poser and Kai's an entertainer. So depending what the judges are liking today.
Yeah, I agree. Who else is in this call-out? So I think we're all agreed
It's
on
gotta be
Kai and
Justin.
Cedric. You
Yeah.
think it's Justin? I agree. And then, from there, it's kind of a toss-up.
I'll tell you what, I'd put Cody in there just based on detail. Maybe in the top 5, top 6. Nobody else has got his detail. He's definitely a lot smaller.
He's a lot smaller.
A lot
It's going
smaller.
to be interesting to
Yeah,
see what they
it's-
do with him
it's
on that.
preference, right? Like I called Dexter at the Olympia because I like condition. I like
Yep,
detail. That's
right.
what I like. And a lot of people disagreed with me, but it depends what the judges want.
Well, you mentioned Kai breathing through that stomach, Chad, and I think that has a lot to do with nerves, and I think that he is a little, maybe unpolished. And we usually see Kai Green so polished, and like you said, away from the stage, almost 2 years, that happens. And I think that he's got to almost go off stage and pull a Kai Green we need Oscar Arden here to meditate
So
with him
what's-
backstage to calm him down a little bit, because I think he needs to slow his breathing down and say, hey, I'm the champ here. I'm the guy who everyone's got to beat, and I got to just cool down and collect my thoughts and not overthink this too much.
So what's happening, guys, right now as we're waiting for these guys to come back out, all the other judges on the panel are handing a piece of paper to the head judge, Steve Weinberger, requesting the comparisons, the call-outs that they want to see. And then head judge Steve Weinberger will look at those sheets and he'll devise his call-outs based on that, because obviously each judge sees it differently. So that's what we're waiting on here. And once again, I want to thank everyone for tuning in this afternoon for our digitalmuscle.com inaugural webcast streaming production of the 2016 Arnold Classic. The men's prejudging is starting to get to the point, Ben, where it's going to get really interesting, because these are the
Competitor
call-outs and the
number 1.
comparisons that
Cedric.
everybody's been waiting
3,
for.
Justin.
And Cedric, Justin, and Kai, I'm
7,
assuming
Josh.
they're going to bring Josh in.
And 12, Kai.
Okay, so this is a big moment for Josh.
Yeah, I don't particularly agree with the call, but I mean the judges like what they see, and I'm actually not sitting as close as the judges are, obviously, so they have a great vantage point. Obviously, he stacks up well against these guys, being a big guy with some good lines.
I think that's the key right there. I mean, if you look at all of these guys have a tremendous amount of
Quarter turn
muscle.
to the right.
They're all very equal as far as muscularity, and I think that when you start breaking them down, it's going to come right down to conditioning.
Quarter
And I
turn
mean,
to the
I
right.
think we're going to see a move here very quickly to put Kai right next to Cedric.
Quarter turn to the right.
Well, it's our first call out here at the Arnold. Josh Lenartowicz, Kai Green, Justin Compton, and Cedric McMillan. And I know everybody's
Face front.
waiting to see Kai Green and Cedric side by side, but this is a good call out. Although the
Front
decision
double
to bring in
bicep.
Josh is a bit surprising for sure.
Well, it's kind of one of those. There's not really anybody else that fits in that place. You know, I mean, Josh has got the size, matches up well against these guys, and
Front
luck of the
lat
draw.
spread.
So now one thing, after having worked with Hani, I'm actually going to call him out on this one. I'm very surprised he's not back there with Compton, because Compton's does not have enough oil in his
Side
upper
chest.
body, and Hani's usually a stickler for those attention to details.
Hani is not working, and Hani told me last night he's not working with Justin. He does sponsor Justin, but he's not his coach. So that's
Okay.
he doesn't.
So
he wanted
whoever's
to keep
Justin's coach missed the ball on that one.
Yeah.
It's a big
Back
issue.
double
He
bicep.
looks like his upper body's flat. It looks like he's lost details.
And it
because there's no
washes
oil.
his midsection out really
Yep.
bad.
Yep. And his color's not dark enough, so those are all knocks. And Josh's color's a little green, so it's going to be kind of tough to call those two. Justin looks great from the back, though. Those arms are just tough to beat.
Back double is
lat
always a
spread.
huge pose, and we always say this is a defining pose. And I have to believe that Kai Green. This is Kai Green's pose. I always say the back pose is a Kai's. Do you guys think that Kai wins back here from behind?
It's not the landslide that it should be.
Side
Let's just say that.
tricep.
I will say this. I think Kai is very dominant from the back, but the problem is he is not that dominant in what we thought he was going to be from every other angle. Again, from the side, he's normally very good in certain shots, but he's having trouble maintaining that, constant breathing.
Abdominals and
The issues with the stomach is starting to stand out. And I mean, because that was such an issue, I think that could definitely hurt him. His quads are always freaky. The detail is always incredible. But I'll tell you what, it's not
Your
what I
favorite
thought it
most
was going to be.
muscular.
Do you find it odd also that Kai is kind of almost too far off to the side? It's like you think he'd come in a little closer to Josh and really try to get into the action here. I think Cedric wins that most muscular shot. I mean, he's as full as we've ever seen him with great conditioning tonight.
We've also got to wonder why they have not moved
Relax.
Kai into the center next to Cedric yet.
Josh, and Kai back in line, please.
Did Josh just move up into the top three?
He's clearly in the top three. I think the thing that is really hurting Justin is the fact that he has just enough of a film. And like you said, he actually looks a little better now because he's starting to sweat a little bit. And so he's starting to get a little bit more shine to him. But I think when he
Justin,
first walked out, when
Josh
he
back
first
in
hit
line.
those shots, it was very, very like his midsection flattened completely out.
Off.
Okay, so now they're taking
Competitor
Justin
two,
away
Max
as well.
Charles.
So.
I think
6'1"
what
Morello.
I noticed when Justin hit that back double bicep, I
8
didn't see a lot of
Branch
detail in
Warren.
that lower back and the glutes. Like there was just like a little level of washout there, almost like you see from Wolf earlier in his career. There was a lack of detail there, and I think that's hurting him because we know that back double bicep is so important.
So we're looking at 5 through 7, and I think this is a great
Gentlemen,
showing for
quarter
Max
turn to the
Charles to
right.
be looked at 5 through 7 against Branch and Juan.
I agree, and I'm actually almost a little surprised Juan is in here. He's big, obviously, but
Quarter turn
he's
to the right.
really lacking a lot of that intricate detail. I was really kind of maybe expecting Cody to kind of jump into this.
Dave, this is feeling more and more like one of those
Quarter turn to the
top-heavy
right.
shows where you got a couple guys that have really made their case, and then it just kind of blends together everybody else.
Well, I think this second call out is basically guys that have great stuff but are
Face
missing
front.
something. Max Charles maybe missing a little leg. Juan maybe missing a little leg. Branch maybe missing a little bit of conditioning.
double
I would have liked to
bicep.
see Evan Santapani in this call out too because I think that he might be better than all 3 of these guys.
Well, the fact that 7 guys have been called out and Evan not among them in a 12-man lineup, that's
Front
definitely
lat
one of the
spread.
bigger stories so far.
I was just going to say that he's the one guy that we have not seen, and I think that he potentially could have matched up very well against these guys. I'll tell you what, I mean, you can see, I think that they really
Side
pushed
chest.
Branch's fullness because he was so flat last week, and you can see that he is gradually starting to fade a little bit. His body fat is at least low, but he's starting to fade. Yeah, and he's got those key spots under the lat.
Double
Yeah, I
bicep.
disagree with his body fat. I mean, he's hanging over his trunks there in the back. That's, to me, that shows me he's not. His body fat isn't low.
Yeah, but I think he's always got that key area too, you know.
Just because it's always there doesn't
It's
make it
always
right.
there. But you can tell he's starting to fade bad.
Back lat spread.
I'll tell you, I mean, Max, he's holding his own, right? I mean, he's a
I'm
big guy,
impressed.
and his conditioning is spot on. I think this is the best Max Charles we've seen.
By far, and he's just so big. If you haven't seen this guy in person, like he's a fellow sidekick
Side
athlete.
tricep.
His shoulders never fit through any conventional doors.
Yeah, I mean, Branch is still holding through the external oblique, and you know, he's definitely holding through those areas. You're definitely right.
Abdominals and thighs.
I have a huge amount of respect for Branch. The guy's such a hard worker, but just hasn't brought his best here tonight.
Your favorite, most muscular.
Great poses from everything from the front for Max. Upper body's just obscene.
And you can see the hardness from Branch as he poses. You can see, and again, it might not be a pretty look.
Thank
It
you,
might not be the
gentlemen.
look
Back in
that a lot
line,
of people,
please.
want to embrace. But that's on many levels. That's what's
Evan,
made Branch a lot of money,
Lucas,
is that
Johnny,
freaky look. And as
Cody,
he
and
poses, his
Tony.
body starts, his muscles start to pop, and the vascularity kicks in, and all of a sudden, it tends to lull those judges in a sense of that's the Branch one we've been waiting for. So.
I'm sure Evan's very disappointed to be in this final five call-outs.
No doubt. And this was a big contest for Evan. A lot of folks felt coming into this thing that this was a chance for
Quarter
Evan to
turn to
kind
the
of
right.
reignite his career, especially in a lineup like this that seemed to be a real
tell you, I mean,
opportunity
Turn to
for
the
him.
right.
I think Evan looks good, but I don't think he's made the progression like some of the other guys had.
Just no detail in the lower
Yes.
body there.
Quarter turn to the right.
Not to mention that Evan Centopani, and I've said this a million times before, is just not a great poser
Face
up there.
front.
He doesn't look like he works on his posing enough. I haven't seen him really improve his posing
Front
and
double
presentation
bicep.
over the last 5 years or so. And I think he's got a lot of tools to work with, and I think he just doesn't – he's not a dynamic poser out there.
Yeah, when Cody gets a little more drop in his
lat
lats,
spread.
this guy's going to be dangerous, I'm telling you.
He's probably got the best legs in that lineup out there right now.
Absolutely.
Cody Montgomery. And for 21 years of age, it's almost unfathomable
Side
to
chest.
figure out or think about what his future potential could be.
And the guy we're not talking about here is Lucas Wiley. He's got some great poses. He's got a great front lat spread, great side pose. His detail isn't quite there yet, but I believe he's a
Back
pretty
double
young
bicep.
guy.
Chad, do you think that it was a mistake for Cody to do the show? You think he would have been better off doing a New York Pro for his pro debut?
I was actually just going to say that. I think a lot of people thought he was going to be kind of over his head
Back
here.
lat
I think
spread.
he hangs with these guys well. I think that the key is going to be how he responds after this. Is this going to drive him and put it in his head that, hey, you know what, I can beat all of these guys, and in a couple years I will. I think it was a smart move because I think, look, if you get the opportunity
Side
at
tricep.
21 to stand on the Arnold stage, you do it.
I agree with Chad. I don't think this was a mistake at all. Like, he's 21. Nobody's judging him, the way they would evaluate Kai or Cedric. This is an opportunity for Cedric or Cody likes to do
and
things that
thighs.
bodybuilders haven't done before. He likes.
Yeah, but he just did the USA like 8 months ago. I mean, come on, don't you want to grow into a pro? You're 21
He
years
was
of
only-
age. What's the rush?
He was only born last week, Dave. But
Yeah, sure. he
it-
can't even rent a car yet. There's no rush. He had. I would have recommended
favorite,
that
most
he
muscular.
take a full year, put on some mass, come into New York Pro, dominate, and you know what? And then take another year
Yeah, but
off.
who's to say he's going to dominate coming to the New York Pro, right? Taking a year off, he may not be training as hard. A lot of guys train harder when they're training for a contest. And I'll tell you what, the guy's got detail for a 21-year-old athlete.
Thank
he
you,
looks
gentlemen.
phenomenal.
Ben, you don't think there's a potential for burnout here? Such a young age, so
It
many
depends
shows.
on a personality, man. It has nothing to do with how much he competes. It has to do with how much his brain can withstand it and his personality. Is he going to have the mind of a champion, or is he going to fold?
And I think that we've seen him progress over the I mean, look, this guy started at a very young age. He has, I think it's because of that competitiveness that he has the maturity that he has right now.
It'll just be interesting to see what his next move is. I think this is a good play for Cody to be here if he now goes on
Max,
and takes the time off just to kind of
Justin,
see this as a starting
Branch,
point.
and
I bet he
Josh.
won't. I bet he won't. I bet he hits another show.
Now that would be a bad
Trying to
decision.
qualify
I'd
for
have a
him.
problem with that.
I bet he does.
Yeah, I'd have a problem with that. I think now we've seen it. He made history, 21 years old in Columbus, and it was a lot of fun. And now I think it's time for him to go to work and spend 18, 24
Well,
months.
this is interesting to see Justin Compton in this lineup.
That's what I was getting ready to say. This
I
is
guess
this
this
is a
would
good
be-
call out for Max.
This
Actually,
would be 2nd through 6th.
Guys, we're watching a two-man show right now.
we clearly are, and I'll tell you what. That's going to
Third
be the
through sixth.
interesting call out, is when we see Kai and Cedric up there by themselves.
See, looking at that pose right there, I say Compton is going to take Josh. but-
Max and Branch, switch, please.
Are they comparing Branch and Justin?
To me, Justin seems just to be fading
Gentlemen,
just a
spread
little
out and hit
bit.
a
I mean,
front
he's
double
still
bicep.
good, but
Yeah,
he seems to. I
definitely
think he was
felt-
sharper last year.
Absolutely, no question. When he was posing last year, he looked like he was made of nails. He was hard as nails.
And you can see Josh. I'm telling you, this kid. The
Front
more he
lat
poses,
spread.
he's going to continue to get harder because he's that one guy that, as his water starts to go, he just continues to get better conditioned. He doesn't really flatten out.
Side chest.
It almost looks to me that he's just the guy who doesn't have any weaknesses. He's not a particularly good bodybuilder. He's just not bad.
Why don't we see Josh next to Justin Compton here? That's what I don't know. That's to me says that the judges are not really maybe someone's not up there as high as we think they are.
Back
Josh isn't
double
holding his
bicep.
glutes.
I think
That's
potentially
gonna-
they
that's
may
gonna
have
hurt him.
Josh ahead. I don't think. I think this is probably 4th, 4th, 5th, and 6th maybe.
Just let him stay on the side.
Potentially, yeah, leaving him on the side. I mean, if they, I don't know, man. Now, these guys are all very, very close. I mean, it's interesting. I mean, the world basically thought Compton was going to be the guy that pushed Kai, and we clearly are
Back
seeing a
lat
different
spread.
show.
Guys, a year ago at this event, Arnold grabbed the microphone and he said clear as day that Cedric McMillan was the look that he liked. This show is the Arnold Schwarzenegger Classic, and and he's not a judge, but it's gonna be fun to see how this thing unfolds.
Look at Compton's glutes here. They're not
Side
impressing you. They
tricep.
don't look that hard like they did when he first came out. They almost got like a layer of water over him, Chad.
Yeah, that's what I said. He is clearly fading. When he first walked out, his glutes were very, very sharp. He has continuously faded through the prejudging, and I think that's going to be a major factor.
Abdominals
And
and
look, the
thighs.
judges pick up on that. That's what they're doing. They're working these guys right now, and look, they can tell that he's starting to fade, and that's why you're seeing these comparisons.
He's another one of these guys who junk loads, and I say to everybody, you can do it if you want, but you're rolling the dice. And for me as a competitor, I want to eliminate as many chances for error as
Your
possible.
favorite,
If I
most
can eliminate
muscular.
variables for error, of course. So it's just showing again.
I got to say, I got Max Charles in that third position. I think they should. I would like to see him standing next to Cedric McMillan and Kai
Maybe
Green.
that's what they're comparing with Josh.
I think that he could pass Leonardowitz here for that third.
Completely agree with you. He's got a beautiful physique.
He's a freak. Look at that upper body, hands on hip, most muscular.
Relax.
That's Ronnie Coleman impressive.
Josh
you
in
know?
between Branch and Justin.
So I think they're trying to verify where they're going to put everybody right now. I think they may have Josh in third place, but I think it may be back and forth with Compton.
Front
And I just
double
wonder
bicep.
if Compton is starting to slip because of the conditioning.
Josh is getting better. His midsection
Exactly.
is getting tired. I always watch a midsection. If you're as you get tired, you're up there for a while. If your midsection gets loose, the judges are seeing it. Josh's midsection is getting better.
And I told you,
Relax.
like, he's a guy that doesn't
Turn
flatten
around,
out
back
drastically, and
double
as that
bicep.
water starts to go, he just has the ability to continue to get
I
harder.
think it says a lot about his training. He probably is a hard trainer. He's contracting those muscles hard, and the muscles stay there. He's actually got real dense muscle rather than just full of water like a lot of the
Absolutely.
guys, right?
And of course the bigger issue here is why aren't more bigger name athletes in this lineup, right? I mean, you look back at the Olympia, the top 6, and
Relax, turn around.
It could be considered a weak show. I mean, hard. You never want to say that about the Arnold Classic.
Of course
but
not.
There's probably a good 6 guys that could be in there, make this a more competitive
So I'm
show.
going to tell you
Favorite,
right
most
now,
muscular.
Dexter Jackson, the way he looked at the Olympia, probably wins this show.
Hands down. Yeah, Josh is getting better. So that midsection is such a big factor in bodybuilding, right? And he's got a nice little waist.
Thank you, gentlemen.
The
Back
guys
in
that
line,
tend to be
please.
in the best shape tend to, I think, hold out in these long
Get better.
poses. They
Absolutely.
get better and better and better, and you start to see more detail in them. The guys that are kind of like
Cedric
bamboozling
and
us with
Kai.
like just the last minute like dry outs, they tend to get worse and fade a
well,
lot.
this is what we've waited for. Kai Green and Cedric McMillan side by side, front and center. And Chad, coming into this thing, there was so much talk that the show
Front double
would in
bicep.
fact come down to this, and Steve is going to take them through their compulsories, and we're going to get it pose for pose, shot for shot.
I'm going to tell you right now, Cedric McMillan wins that shot. I think that he has been able to maintain his conditioning,
Front
which
lat
sometimes
spread.
Let's
he
take this
doesn't.
pose by pose. That's the way it goes.
Absolutely.
Let's take this pose by pose. David, who do you call?
I definitely got Cedric on front double.
I agree with you. This is big. This is a good pose for Kai. Who's going to take this one?
This is a good pose, but I'll tell you what,
Side
if you look
chest.
at Kai's legs, they're starting to fade.
Kai's
He's
fading.
through
He's
the
fading through the
midsection.
chest. Yep.
Right now, obviously as we start to go to the back, Kai is going to be more dominant, but this is a phenomenal showing for Cedric. And when you look at it, like Cedric's
Back double
hamstring
bicep.
drop, the conditioning
lower
through the
body,
side is unbelievable. Now he's obviously going to get beat here. I have Cedric in the side chest.
I give it to Kai just because of the lower body. I'm a lower body guy.
I give it to Cedric only because of the Arnold-like side chest pose.
Well,
there.
and the way his serratus and everything wraps around, the flatness
Let's
of
look
the
at the
stomach.
detail in the back. Ooh, man.
I mean,
That's
obviously
supposed to be
Kai is
Kai's
so
best
thick.
pose.
It's
Right.
not his best shot
I'm
right
giving it
now.
to Cedric.
Well, you just nailed it. That's supposed to be the lights
That's
out
close.
knockout punch
And
for
it's
Kai.
This is going to be a
This is the
closer.
lights
This,
out one.
when he pulls it back, that detail. But again, it's not that crisp, sharp detail that we're used to from Kai. It was a little better at the beginning.
Side tricep.
But the lat spread goes to, and for whatever it's worth, guys, the camera operator is a convention center. They go ahead and they control this. If we had control
look
of these
at
cameras,
Cedric from
Cedric
the
wins
side
that.
in that
you'd
shot.
be seeing some
pose.
different angles. But we're kind of at the
Cedric wins
mercy
the
of what
side
they
tricep.
give us.
I got this for you. I got
Thighs.
the real lat spread on Cedric McMillan. Kai might have more detail, but Cedric's got a bigger, wider back than Kai.
Cedric McMillan gunning for his first title here in Columbus. Kai Green going for number 3.
And nobody's going to
favorite,
argue
most
that Cedric's
muscular?
waist is going to win this that pose. Obviously Kai's got the legs, but Cedric's getting harder. The detail. You see, my thing with Cedric is he never has that detail through the shoulders when he hits that pose. When he hits any pose, it's usually a little watery in through the tricep and delt tie, and he's really
Just the
crisp.
way the muscle is pushing against the skin on Cedric,
Gentlemen, thank you
you're
very
not
much.
seeing
This
that with
concludes
Kai right
round
now.
one.
And you're
Thank
seeing
you.
a definite kink in the armor there. I think that Cedric could easily win this. If you break it down pose for pose, I think that Cedric wins more shots.
But the overall impression, who wins? I'm seeing Kai Green, and I'm thinking Ronnie Coleman, end of his career. Starting to see the waist a little bigger, maybe not as dominant, but you still got those body parts and certain shots that are just hard
There's no doubt.
to contend with.
All right, guys. Well, that's going to wrap up the men's